Hi everyone.
All right.
Hi Aaron.
Hi, Oscar. Thank you for joining us. We've got the F1 in Schools team here, local to us here in the Chicago area. We've sponsored them for this season. They did fantastic. They won nationals, and they've got some awesome questions prepared that they would love to get a chance to ask you. So you guys obviously know Oscar, right? Current Formula One driver, having a fantastic rookie season, and somebody we've supported for essentially the whole career with HB Tuners. So without further ado, I'll let the guys from the team start asking the questions. Go ahead, introduce yourself. Just say like what grade you're in and hit it with the questions. Let's go.
Hi, my name's Raza. I'm a junior in high school. And my first question was, from a driver's perspective, how much of a difference does like the minute engineering adjustments you make throughout a race weekend affect your performance?
You always try to get the balance of the car right, so you don't want it to have too much oversteer or too much understeer. So you try and always get that right. Also now with the cars that we have, they're really sensitive to ride height. So basically the lower to the ground you can get them, the faster you go. So that's a really important one for the engineers. But the biggest difference that like we can feel as a driver is usually what they do with the front wing. If they increase the angle of the front wing, you have a lot more front grip. And yeah, all the other changes. But you definitely feel them. It's definitely a process you have with your engineer. So yeah, it's very important.
Thank you.
Nice shirt, by the way. I like it.
Thank you. Very big fan.
Hi, my name is Zin. I'm in 8th grade, and I wanted to ask, how closely do you work with the engineers to optimize the car setup? And what's your role in providing them feedback? Also, how much feedback does a sim driver give?
Yep, I work with the engineers very closely. The engineers are always trying to make the car as quick as possible from the simulations that they have and what in theory should be quickest. But sometimes what's quickest in theory is actually really, really difficult to drive. So there's always an element of, I have to be able to drive it consistently and not crash. So there's always an element of that. The sim drivers are very useful. Before I was in F1, I did quite a lot of simulator work as a reserve driver. So I did quite a lot of the sort of race support. So on the race weekends, we have someone back at McLaren on the simulator doing testing a bunch of stuff for us in the virtual world on the Friday night after practice. So you always have to treat that with a bit of an element of slight skepticism, I would say, because sometimes what happens in the virtual world doesn't always work in the real world, but they're very important and it allows us to try some more things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to try. So engineer and driver relationships are very important, and the sim drivers are very important as well.
So I'm Joshin. I'm a junior in high school, and are there specific engineering aspects of the F1 car that took you a while to understand? And do you think it would have been harder to race a few years ago with more dirty air coming from the car?
I think the biggest thing, and this kind of goes back to the previous question as well, is I just have to be able to tell the team what the car is doing, both good and bad, what I would like the car to do better. And then I kind of leave it into their hands on what they actually want to change. The front wing, for example, is a very quick change that you can do in between sessions, or in between runs, basically, during the same session. So that's quite a quick adjustment, and it's quite it just changes how much front grip you have, more or less. So that's quite a simple one, but through qualifying, for example, when the track is constantly getting grippier and grippier, it's important to know how much to keep putting in. You kind of have to preempt how much front wing you want to add each run. The engineering side, I know what most things do. Like if you put a stiffer rear roll bar in, if you go softer at the front, I know roughly what it should do. But the most important thing for me is to just tell the engineers that it does what we think. And in terms of the dirty air, I think yes, the old cars would have definitely been more difficult to race in. The only good thing about that was the slipstream was really big, so you could pass people a bit easier on the straights if you did get close, but getting close was very difficult from what I saw. So it's still a bit of a problem for us now, but not as bad as it was.
I'm Caden, I'm a junior in high school, and the question I had was, with the ongoing advancements in technology and aerodynamics, how do you adapt to the constant changes in car dynamics from season to season from a driver's perspective?
Yeah, I think as drivers, you it's of course it's very important to be able to drive fast, but you need to be able to drive a lot of different cars, and every car every year is going to feel slightly different. Even for us this year, we've had obviously some pretty big upgrades through the season that have helped us a lot. So you kind of have to adjust to that all the time. I think with the tires and the regulations, there's always kind of a built-in characteristic of how the car's going to feel, which is sometimes nice, sometimes not so nice. But you just need to be able to adapt. That's the biggest thing. And also just testing yourself in different conditions. Certain cars like to be set up in certain ways that are quick, but not necessarily that comfortable or natural. So you just have to try and do practice with it and learn to be comfortable with it.
Hi, my name is Ian and I'm in 11th grade, and I was just wondering, in terms of energy management, particularly with the hybrid systems, what's the strategy for deploying the ERS during a race?
A lot of the energy side of things is all automated for us. So we use Mercedes engines, and they have kind of like an optimal deployment around the lap for us. And I mean, the general rule of thumb is generally in the slower corners. On the exits of those corners, that's where you really want the deployment, because when you're going at a lower speed, if you can gain an extra couple of miles an hour, percentage wise, it's much more beneficial than if you're going a couple of miles an hour quicker at 200 miles an hour. It's much less effective than if you're doing 60 miles an hour. So it's generally out of the corners where we use it the most, but in the race it's quite a big strategic element, because it is mostly automated, but we can recharge and use the overtake button ourselves. So I don't know if anyone saw the race, but with Alonso and Perez, Alonso was very, very smart with how he recharged the battery and stuff like that, and managed to hold Perez off. So there's a big human element to it, but in a qualifying lap, for example, that's all done for us, and there's a bunch of engineers and simulations that work that out.
And Oscar, just to make sure, they've all seen the race.
Okay, good.
Like maybe a couple times.
Okay, good.
Hi, I'm Ayush. I'm a junior, and this is like more of a fun question. But if you could take any F1 circuit in the world and drive it backwards, which one would it be?
Very, very good question. It's not one I've thought about massively, if I'm honest. I've seen, I think Verstappen drive Eau Rouge at Spa backwards before. That would be scary as hell. I mean, to be honest, I think the tracks that are good the right way are probably also going to be good in reverse as well. And the tracks that are bad the right way, probably not going to be much better in reverse. So, I don't know, Barcelona actually could be quite a cool one in reverse, because especially now that they've changed the last sector, turn 1 and turn 2 in reverse would be really, really fast. So, yeah, maybe Barcelona.
Hi, I'm Defton, sophomore in high school. So we know you made a fantastic transition from F3 to F2 to F1. Which F2 or F3 driver do you think can be the next star?
Very good question. For me, I think in F2, I think Porsche is good. He was very quick when I raced against him. I think also Victor Martins is probably the quickest guy I've raced against in the junior categories. So I think he'll be very good next year. F3, I think Bortoletto, who won this year, was very impressive. Those are probably the three guys off the top of my head, I would say.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm a junior in high school. And the next question is, in your transition from junior racing to F1, what was the most challenging aspect of adapting?
I think in terms of driving, getting used to the braking was the biggest thing. I don't know what the G-forces in terms of braking are in F2, but I would imagine something like 3 Gs maybe. That's a very rough guess, so don't hold me on that. But in F1, it's more like 5, close to 6. So I would say it's about double. And the first time I drove an F1 car and hit the brakes, I did not brace my neck properly, basically, and my head, I basically had to lift my head up when I stopped slowing down because I couldn't see. So that was the biggest thing to get used to. I'm used to it now, but also just the longer races, like there's much more strategy involved because the races are like double as long as the F2 feature races, but also just like all the media, all the like sponsors stuff, all the fans, that's very, very different from the junior racing. So that's taken some getting used to as well.
All the Zoom calls from Chicago.
Well, this is my first one, so I'm still getting used to it. It's all right.
My name is Thara. I'm a freshman in high school, and I have a question more towards Team Dynamics with you and Lando. So both of you guys saw massive improvements throughout the season, and so like, what were the biggest changes that happened in terms of like car performance and things like that?
The biggest one mainly was in some ways the development direction we went in. So I would say towards the end of last year and the car we started with this year, the floor was the biggest change we've made. I guess you guys all saw how much of a difference that made. So the floor was the biggest thing, but there's not really like one like magic bullet that will get you to the front. You kind of have to improve everything a bit.
I have a question about just driving different F1 cars over different years. So, like, guys, when you drove the car at Alpine versus with McLaren, was there any major differences you felt in the aerodynamics or the car setup or even the engine?
There was some differences, yes. The engine was reasonably different, I would say. You know, firstly, just the sound was quite different. Also, you know, stuff with like gear changes, battery deployment. It's all, you know, it's not massively different, but different enough that you notice it a bit. The car's handled a little bit differently, and I think that is down to, you know, where the aerodynamics are kind of focused on. So yeah, there's definitely some differences. After a few laps and a few sessions, it's very, very hard to pick the differences. I mean, they're still F1 cars built to the same rules, so they can only be a certain amount different, but yeah, definitely there was some things that were different.
That ends the prepared questions. Do you guys have any other last second ones?
I have.
Of course they do.
Mine is just kind of like through the day-to-day, like what keeps you motivated as an F1 driver to keep pushing, to keep trying to get points?
Good question. I think for me, like, I'm obviously my first year, so it's very easy to stay motivated because this is something I've wanted to do for like the last 15 years, basically. So just being in Formula One is a very cool thing, and I'm hoping it never becomes uncool because, yeah, that's probably when I'm going to retire, when I think that. But what keeps me motivated? I guess just trying to win. You know, I feel like I've got a lot that I want to achieve in F1. You know, I think all the drivers, we don't want to just be on the grid and competing. We want to be able to try and win. And I think, now with how we are as a team, we're very, very close to being able to win. So yeah, just trying to win, trying to beat everyone else. And yeah, I want to become world champion one day. I'm sure everyone on the grid does. And yeah, that's what keeps me motivated.
Well, me, actually, I ended up growing up for the first couple of years of my life in Australia as well. And so one thing I've very much noticed is that there are extremely, extremely strict traffic laws, especially with speeding. Coming out of an F1 car, has there ever been instances where you've been pulled aside and ticked off?
I've lived in the UK for the last 8 years, so I've not driven in Australia that much, but yes, the traffic laws are extremely strict. Yeah, I very much get the pain. So yeah, but it's okay. For me, it's very easy to jump from an F1 car to a road car because they're so different that you'd never even get confused. That doesn't mean that I'm not tempted to accelerate quickly sometimes, but I resist myself.
Getting into an F1 car for the first time must have been a surreal experience. Were you like nervous or excited, and how did you feel after you got out of it?
Both. I was excited because it was, I was about to drive an F1 car. I don't think I need to say more. But also very, very nervous because, one, it's very, very fast. Two, it's very expensive, and it wasn't my car. So yeah, I was quite nervous. It also didn't really help the engineers. I don't think the engineers that day really kind of understood like how big of a moment it was. So they were kind of just like, oh yeah, we're gonna go out in 5 minutes. You should probably put your helmet on and jump in. Like it was a little bit understated. So yeah, it all kind of happened very, very quickly. But no, I was very, very excited. And then once I got out on track and did like my first couple of laps, yeah, it was a hell of a lot of fun.
I was just wondering how you think this current generation of cars is going to be able to handle like the really low track temperatures in Vegas. I think it's like 4 degrees Celsius, which is crazy.
Well, to be completely honest with you, we're wondering the same thing. It's going to be interesting. The biggest the cars themselves will be fine in the cold temperatures. It's more the tires that are going to be the biggest issue. Yeah, we don't really know how they're going to react yet. It's not looking quite as cold as it was at one stage. So I think at the moment the forecast is kind of like 8 or 9 degrees Celsius when we're driving. So that should be okay, I think. A genuine consideration for us when we saw it could be like 2 or 3 degrees Celsius was how we were going to keep our hands warm. Because when we turn, our hands kind of stick out the top of the chassis and they're in the air. And yeah, they get extremely cold at that temperature and that speed. So that was a genuine consideration. But from a car point of view, we should be fine. We should have quite a lot of downforce actually because the air will be so dense at that temperature. But yeah, the tires are going to be a mystery for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for the questions. We're gonna transition to a fun separate exercise to close out this video. So, Oscar, a certain Chris Piastri, who is now known as Mr. Oscar Dad, gave us some fun stories from his perspective. So I'm gonna allude to the story. I want to hear your perspective of it. So allegedly, once upon a time in the UK, you catastrophically destroyed the oil pan on your car. So like, what happened there? Do you remember that?
I remember it very well. It wasn't that long ago, actually. It was, when was it? 4 years ago. I remember it very well because it was the day before my 18th birthday. I was driving along a quite a narrow country road in the UK that was very straight. There was no other cars. And what I didn't know was that later in the road, there was like a massive drop, basically, and it basically caused a massive bump. So this crest turned into a jump, and my oil pan was what I launched off. So that was not one of my prouder moments. But the car survived mostly. I just had to get that replaced. Everything else was fine. So yeah, I won't be doing that again. I won't be doing that again.
So, have you ever been on a flight from Melbourne to London and abandoned your dad in economy while you upgraded yourself to business class? Did that happen?
So, I actually forgot that had happened. I don't recall it that well, but I'm sure my dad wouldn't have mentioned it if it didn't happen. So, basically the way it worked, at that time I was flying out to Europe for some of my karting races and back to Australia, so I was getting a lot of frequent flyer points. And it was very expensive to upgrade to business with money. So you could upgrade with these frequent flyer points. My dad, as it turns out, naively taught me how to upgrade myself, because some of the flights I was doing myself. So one of the flights that we were together on, I clearly must have upgraded myself again, which I would like to repeat that he taught me how to do. But because he was a higher status than me, like with the airline, he didn't upgrade, because there was a good chance that if he upgraded, then I wouldn't get it. So, and he clearly didn't know that I had done this. So, I got a nice business class seat for that trip, and he didn't. So, I was very happy.
And we'll wrap up with the final one. This one is apparently titled F words. So you may not remember this because you were apparently in first grade, but Oscar was asked to list as many words that started with the letter F as possible. And as a first grader, you apparently just kept going and going until you reached the, let's call it, more adult-oriented words. Do you remember this?
Yep, very, very well. I'm sure you guys can imagine what kind of words start with F. So I wrote not just like one or two, I wrote all of them that I could think of. I remember my friend was next to me at the time, and he was like, we got to the end of the children's F words, and then I said, what about all these ones? And he said, are you sure we're allowed to write that? I said, well, they said list F words, so yeah, why not? I would like to add, I wrote the most F words out of anyone. The teacher also spoke to my parents about it, but that's okay, I won. So that's where, even then, listing the most amount of F words, regardless of how much trouble it got me in, I was always trying to beat other people.
You apparently got a sticker for winning for the most number of F words, so.
Yes, I did.
Well, that's all the time we have today with Oscar. Thank you so much, Oscar. Team Aeros. Any final words from either side?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and good luck.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed my answers. Hopefully they were useful. Good luck to you guys. I hope you have a lot of success in the future, and maybe if you guys do well enough, maybe we'll see you at an F1 race. So best of luck and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good luck, Oscar. Last two races of the season. Finish out strong. You've had a fantastic rookie season. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
See you guys.